A telegram appeared at the home of Hubert's grieving father, sent from Dublin and signed by a man named J. Hartigan. It contained only 3 words. Hooray! 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 No explanation. No sympathy. No context. Just celebration. Days later, another message arrived, this time a postcard sent to a national newspaper, furious that the telegram had been made public. It carried another chilling statement. It is a mystery they will never solve. Nearly a century later, those words still haunt one of Britain's strangest unsolved deaths. Because in the summer of 1931, a young army officer sat down for a quiet dinner with his wife. Within hours, he was fighting for his life. By morning, he was dead. And nobody could ever prove who poisoned him. Lieutenant Hubert George Hugh Chevis seemed to have a promising future ahead of him. At just 28 years old, he was an officer in the Royal Artillery and an instructor at Aldershot training camp. Friends described him as intelligent and well-liked. Only 6 months earlier, he had married Frances Rawlinson, a wealthy heiress whose first husband had also been a military officer. From the outside, the couple appeared comfortable and successful. They lived in a military bungalow near Deepcut Camp in Surrey. Nothing about their lives suggested that one of Britain's most enduring mysteries was about to begin. The weekend had been busy. The couple had just attended the famous Aldershot military tattoo. But by the next evening, Sunday, June 21, 1931, the excitement had faded into a quiet dinner at home. Frances had personally traveled to London to buy a brace of Manchurian partridges as a treat. In the kitchen, their cook prepared them. Their batman served them. As a loving gesture, Frances gave Hubert the larger bird, keeping the smaller one for herself. Then something happened. Hubert took a bite. Almost immediately, he reacted. According to witnesses, he called for the batman and complained about the taste. "Take this bird away. It is the most terrible thing I have tasted." His wife tasted her portion as well. She agreed something was horribly wrong. The remaining meat was taken back to the kitchen and promptly burned in the stove. At that moment, nobody realized those few bites, and the ashes in the hearth, would become the center of a mystery that would outlive everyone involved. Not long after dinner, Hubert became violently ill. The symptoms were severe. Painful cramps. Muscle spasms. Convulsions. Doctors were summoned urgently. Then Frances began feeling sick too. A second doctor arrived. Both were rushed to the hospital. But Hubert's condition kept worsening. Medical staff fought through the night to save him. Several doctors worked on him for hours. Nothing helped. The next morning, Hubert Chevis died. Tests quickly revealed a shocking cause. Strychnine. A deadly poison. Powerful enough to kill in very small amounts. Doctors discovered approximately 2 grains of strychnine in his stomach. Suddenly, this wasn't a medical emergency. It was potentially a crime. Investigators moved fast. Their first question seemed obvious. Was the entire shipment of partridges contaminated? Experts tracked down the London shop where Frances bought the birds and examined others from the same wholesale shipment. Nothing. No poison. No contamination. No explanation. The poison appeared to be isolated entirely to the food served at the Chevis home. That changed everything. If the shipment wasn't contaminated, someone must have tampered with the food. But who? And when? The kitchen staff came under scrutiny. So did everyone who had access to the house. Police examined timelines. Interviewed witnesses. Followed every lead they could find. Yet each answer created another question. The deeper investigators looked, the stranger the case became. Naturally, detectives focused on the people closest to Hubert. His wife, Frances, was questioned extensively. So was her former husband, Major George Jackson. The former husband immediately attracted intense attention. Jackson wasn't just any military officer, he was a veterinary officer in the Royal Army Veterinary Corps. A horse doctor. This meant he had easy, professional, and unquestioned access to lethal poisons like strychnine. But Jackson maintained he was nowhere near the scene. He claimed he was in Northampton at the time and denied any involvement whatsoever. Investigators checked his story. Nothing definitively linked him to the poisoning. Attention shifted again. Back to the household. Back to the servants. Back to anyone who might have handled the food. But there was a problem. Opportunities seemed scattered among multiple people. Motive was even harder to establish. Nobody stood out clearly. Nobody appeared to have both the motive and opportunity necessary to commit the crime. The investigation began to stall. And then, as if the mystery needed another layer, the messages arrived. The first telegram was bizarre enough. Hooray! 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 It arrived on the day of Hubert's funeral, sent directly to his grieving father, Sir William Chevis. Police traced it back to a post office in Dublin. The sender had signed the form J. Hartigan, leaving a local hotel as his address. The search expanded rapidly into Ireland. A Dublin chemist came forward with a shocking revelation. Weeks before the murder, he had sold strychnine to a man whose appearance perfectly matched the description of the mysterious telegram sender. It looked as though the mystery might finally crack open. But the lead evaporated. When police checked the hotel, they found J. Hartigan didn't exist. The name and address were entirely fake. Investigators were forced to conclude the telegram was either the work of a cruel, unstable prankster, or a brilliant killer who knew exactly how to vanish into thin air. The most dramatic lead in the entire investigation turned out to be a dead end. And yet questions remained. Some researchers later pointed toward Frances Chevis. There were rumors of an affair. There were reports that she had changed her will shortly before Hubert's death. There were questions about why the remaining birds were burned so quickly, destroying vital forensic evidence. But none of it amounted to proof. Only speculation. Others believed someone inside the military community may have been involved. Some suggested the poison had been intended for someone else. Others argued the death could even have been accidental. Each theory explained certain pieces. None explained everything. The puzzle refused to come together. Weeks after Hubert Chevis died, a coroner faced an uncomfortable reality. There simply wasn't enough evidence. Not enough to call it murder. Not enough to call it an accident. Not enough to identify a culprit. An open verdict was returned. Officially, the mystery remained unsolved. And that's where the story still stands today. A healthy young officer sits down to dinner. One bite changes everything. Poison somehow finds its way into a single bird. A husband dies. A wife survives. A cryptic stranger celebrates the death from another country. And every promising lead eventually fades into uncertainty. Nearly 100 years later, nobody knows who put the strychnine in that partridge. Nobody knows whether the victim was specifically targeted. And nobody knows whether the person responsible escaped justice entirely. But perhaps the most unsettling detail isn't the poison. It's the warning. Because if the sender was telling the truth, he left investigators with a challenge that still hasn't been answered. It is a mystery they will never solve. So far, history has proven him right.